Hello, this video is to demonstrate and discuss my late 60s, early 70s Traynor YSR-1 Custom Reverb head. The Custom Reverb head, of course, has reverb, as the name would imply. It's a 50-watt amplifier that uses 6 CA7 tubes. The 6 CA7 tube is the North American designation of the EL34, which I'm sure most people are a little more familiar with from Marshall amps, etc. This amp has quite a few tubes. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total tubes, 6 in the preamp and 2 in the output section. On the inputs, each input has, or each channel has 2 inputs, which gives you the advantage of being able to plug into one channel and take a jumper wire over to the next channel. That allows you to not only run this tube, which is half of a 12AX7, but you can also parallel this other half of the 12AX7. Now, another very interesting thing about this amp, as opposed to some other amps that we're more familiar with that do this, is that this amp actually has independent stages for the first 2 stages. So not only is this tube independent of channel 2, but this tube is also independent of channel 2. You can see the signal comes out here, goes through your cap, goes through a pot. Wiper goes to the next tube here. Doesn't go to this one. You would think that it would come out and then go to the next tube, but that's not doesn't appear to be the case here. I haven't traced out to see whether or not this schematic is the exact one that I have, because I did find out one variation. This schematic in the reverb section does not have a transformer driving the reverb, which is one variation. This was a 1967 schematic, so I'm thinking this is the earlier version of this circuit, and I may have a slightly later version. But yeah, interesting that this tube, this half of the 12AX7, and then the next half of a 12AX7 is independent to this channel, and then the second 2 halves are independent to this channel. So you actually get even a greater amount of effect on this amplifier by using that jumpering method that I described, and we'll get into that a little bit later and kind of see the difference and the effect that it makes, and it's pretty drastic. By jumpering channels, you really get a lot more gain, a lot more crunch. You can see here there are 2 entire tubes dedicated to just the reverb in this schematic. I guess that lends credence to the whole custom reverb designation, because this is, I mean, the reverb is very good, as you'll see later, but maybe that's one reason why they've dedicated 2 entire tubes worth of gain to just pushing this reverb, and it is a very strong reverb. If you notice here, there's a little bit of negative feedback coming. Doesn't seem to be very much, but there is a little bit. This is a grid biased amp. You see here, there's no biasing on the cathodes of the power tubes. It's grid bias, but if you follow the bias down here, you see in line is a pot for the intensity on the tremolo. The tremolo is actually varying the bias on the output tubes. The tremolo has one 12AX7 all its own to do that job. Rectifier is solid state. Not much else to report here. Let's take a look at the insides. Okay, here is the amp chassis. First thing you notice about this is the Panzer tanks that we have going on here for transformers. Here is the power transformer, and it's just huge. The output transformer is almost as big as the power transformer. This is the little reverb transformer. All of the tubes here, these are all 12AX7s. and then you have the 6C-A7 for the power, which is the North American version of the EL-34. Here are the original Mallory caps. The front panel, it's going to be kind of hard to see. I've got it kind of in the shadows here, but you can see it has 4 inputs. There's volume for the first channel, volume for the second channel, treble, bass, reverb controls with speed and intensity. There's your standby switch. The reverb tank is out because, well, first of all, here's the cab with the reverb tank out, and the reverb tank comes out of the bottom, and there's a little metal panel that comes out the bottom with it, which gives you pretty easy access to the reverb tank, which is kind of nice. One thing I really appreciate about Traynor is the amount of time they seem to have spent considering the repairman, because their amps are always pretty easy to get out. On the inside of the cab, they actually have little rails. I don't know if you can see it or not. Let's see if we can show that. There are actually little channels on the inside of the cab that the chassis just slides into, which means that when you loosen these screws, any repairman knows when you loosen the screws on some of these, the chassis just is going to fall down. You need like 3 hands to try to finagle your way to get, to get the nut off and then the screw off, and then you have to hold the chassis up at the same time, and somehow you got to do all this at once. But they seem to have thought of a lot of these little things that make life easier for repair people. The reverb tank is out of this thing at the moment because, first of all, it didn't work when I got it, and the reason it didn't work is because these little wires running to the jacks were completely deteriorated. Those are made with thin little wires like this, and for some reason they were just almost completely gone. Every single one of them. I think this one might have been stored in a garage at some point, and those wires had either been eaten by bugs or something, because they were just completely gone. And it's an extremely delicate process to try to get those soldered back onto these little coils which drive the springs. And if you get one of these, and if you get any amp really with a reverb tank like this, and the reverb tank doesn't work, or the reverb tank tests bad, before you throw your reverb tank away or throw it in the recycle bin or whatever you're going to do with it, take a moment and see if you have the soldering skills to try to get these leads soldered back on here. Now, the copper in these coils is extremely thin. It's like angel hair thin. So you really have to be careful that you get that little thin wire along with your new wire, a good secure connection. And actually, that's one of the things that I did not get when I first repaired this. I still had some noise issues and grounding issues going on with this tank, and come to find out, just one of these little angel hair connections was not all the way soldered in, so I had to come back over here and solder this guy back in. The wires that I'm using now are actually a little thicker than they probably should be, but I think they're still going to be okay. There's good spring, I think, so when you jostle this thing around, these wires I don't think are any danger of breaking. And it's probably best to use braided wire, which these are braided wires. So braided wires, and try to get the thinnest ones that you can, and make sure you get those soldered in, and be very, very careful when you do it. But now the reverb tank is back to 100%, and salvaged the original reverb tank, and that's one less thing I had to buy, one less thing I had to throw away. And anytime you can do that, you're way ahead. But yeah, there is the top of the chassis. Let's look at the inside. Okay, here is the inside of the amp, and this is before I've done any kind of work to this. So we still have the 2-prong cord coming in, which I will replace with a 3. We still have the original power caps, which I have no intention actually of changing these. The amp is extremely quiet. I don't think there's a problem with any of these. I'll put a meter on them and test them and see, but I think these are going to be just fine, even though they're old. I mean, this comes back to what I was saying about, you know, anytime you can try to salvage what's here and save a little bit of time, effort, energy. You'll be pretty ahead in the game, unless you're going to take this thing on a European tour and you're going to rely upon it, you know, every single night for weeks on end. These are probably going to be fine. Even if you did that, those would probably still be fine. But you know, just one of these cap cans, and I think this is a 40-40-40 cap can. Just one of these is going to cost you about $30 just to replace one of those. If you replace it with a can, you can replace it with individual caps, which if I did replace this, I probably would do, and then mount them somehow inside this chassis. But the fact that these are still good, I see no reason to come in here and change these. A lot of people would say, you know, a lot of repair people would say, well, you got to get rid of those caps, and there's a good argument to be made there. And again, if you're going to take this thing on a European tour or something, you know, maybe I would consider that strongly. But as is, I'm going to let the next owner decide what he or she would like to do with that. And as far as I'm concerned, those caps can remain right there because they're in perfect working order. Here you can see the big power resistors. Here is the rectifier circuit. Here's the bottom of the, and you can see around the bottom of these tube sockets, you can see a lot of little discoloration and things. I think this thing might have been stored in a garage at one point or something, and when I got it, it was full of little bug carcasses, not roaches or anything like that, but they were like little I don't know, all kinds of little guys, like the things that you see swarming around, you know, lights. Maybe they had it even stored in a garage, like under a big light or something, and bugs were just attracted to the light and ended up getting in here and kind of breeding or something. But anyway, I vacuumed all that stuff out, and it was all dried anyway. So that's what you see, all this little discoloration and stuff on the chassis itself. But other than that, I mean, the circuit's pretty clean, and the only other thing I really had to do was come in here. Some of these connections you can see here were a little bit crusty, and when you scrape it, now some of that's probably resin from the solder, but I think some of it might be a little bit of corrosion as well. So I came in here and scraped most of the little bits of corrosion from in between all the contacts and sprayed this all out, and got it nice and clean. But that's the only thing I've done to the inside so far. Here we also see the death cap still in place. This is the ground, and you won't need that once you go to a 3-prong anyway. So I'll probably either bypass this, or if I leave it in, it's not going to really do anything. So we'll probably remove those from the circuit. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, on these all these little contacts back here, you really want to come in here, and I will do this also. Anytime you have these connections to ground from the tips of the plugs, you want to come in here and burnish these contacts on the inside. What I usually do is spray them with some contact cleaner and then come in with a thin piece of, and I know they make fancy burnishing tools and all for that, but usually what I do is come in with a thin piece of a very fine sandpaper or something in between the two contacts and go each way with it and burnish those contacts. You know, a piece of probably 600 or 1,000 grit sandpaper in there is going to burnish those contacts nicely. And if you don't do that and you start to lose connection, you end up getting intermittent tremolo or intermittent reverb, or whatever the connection is controlling. It'll end up intermittent, and you don't want that. Also, it looks like this one has a safety. So if you accidentally plug this thing in and you did not have if if you did not have a load on it. It looks like it's got a safety here for the load. I haven't looked at the schematic yet while I'm making this video, but just on initial inspection here, it looks like that's what that probably is. Let's see, what else? Not much else to report here. You know, again, this thing was really dirty at first, and I think I've gone a long way toward cleaning all that up. And it doesn't need very much. I think all I'm going to end up probably doing on this one is replacing that power cord, removing the death cap, and that might even be it, besides the reverb unit repair. But anyway, yeah, that's the chassis. Now let's listen to some of the tones. Before we listen to the tones of the amp, one other thing I just wanted to point out real quickly is the quality of the construction of these older amps, and you know, particularly something like the Fenders, Marshalls, Traynors. Marshalls may even be somewhat of an exception because by the 70s they were doing printed circuit boards, but I mean, this is very similar in construction. Anybody who's opened up a Fender, an old Silverface or Blackface or anything pre 1980s from Fender will probably recognize this quality of construction. I mean, first of all, in this Traynor, we saw the big, huge, you know, Panzer tank like transformers, which is just, I mean, a type of quality that you don't see a lot today. Another thing you'll notice, the tube sockets, you know, they're all mounted to the chassis. They're not mounted to some printed circuit board. All of the, let's come around here and you'll see also all of the pots are all mounted to, you know, they're all bolted here to the front of the chassis as well. They're not mounted on some circuit board with leads that go directly into it. You know, this is something you don't think about. You know, a lot of younger guys out there, or if you've never had one of these, I'll actually open an amp to see the guts. I mean, there's a huge difference. I mean, compare this, what you're seeing here, with say this. This is an example of what I'm talking about. This is a printed circuit board. You see here the tube sockets are directly mounted to a circuit board of their own. The leads are going with ribbon cables to the main board. You know, all of this stuff is flimsy. It's prone to overheating. I mean, look at the discoloration on some of these tube sockets themselves. I mean, see the yellow around those where all the heat was going directly into that board. Over time, I mean, we talk about going on a European tour. I mean, this is the kind of thing you do not want to take with you. Because this is just going to fall apart. You know, this is made quickly, it's made cheaply in a factory. All of this is wave soldered, and it probably costs Fender, you know, probably cost them under $5 to make this entire board, and that's probably with parts and labor and everything included. You know, which they have to stay in business. I understand that, but when you do things like direct, you know, mount pots onto the board, you're not expecting longevity of your product. You're expecting a product that you're going to put onto the market, someone's going to buy, someone's going to enjoy, and eventually it's going to break, and someone's going to have to go buy another one or have an expensive repair bill on their hands. So, you know, there's one good reason why you should always try to consider, you know, something vintage rather than something new. I mean, just as an example, you know, this, I don't know what I'm going to end up charging or what kind of labor I'm going to have in this Traynor, but you know, by the time I factor everything in, you know, this Traynor amplifier, this big, massive, you know, 50-watt monstrous Traynor, with all this nice hand-wired construction, you know, it's going to be probably roughly the same price as what one of these things would be new. And why would you do that to yourself? I mean, why would you buy this over this? I see no reason whatsoever. I don't see any argument you could possibly make, even with warranty considerations, that you could possibly make for purchasing this with your good money over that. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to point that out while I had this chassis open, because I think a lot of people don't quite understand that, and it's understandable that a lot of people wouldn't understand it, because if you go get your advice from places like, and I'm not knocking any of the big box guitar stores or anything like that, because I think they do a good job with what they have available and all, but I don't know if all of them are quite as educated as they need to be on the products that they sell. And this is one of the things that people often overlook when shopping for guitar equipment, is the quality of the construction. So anyway, now that we've pointed that out, let's check out some of the tones. Okay, we have this amplifier still out here on the floor. The cord's been changed to a 3-prong. The death cap was removed. Here's that. There's that little guy. It's taken out. So yeah, let's check out some of the tones. For the purpose of the tone demo, I'll be using a 1988 American Standard Telecaster. I'm going into channel 1. I'm actually jumping over to channel 2 as well, to give us access to both sides. I'll start out with just channel 1 here, about halfway up or so. The tone's real low, about on 1.5 or so, and the bass is actually turned down as well to about 3. But even with those cuts, this thing is pretty darn loud. Reverb tank is working perfectly. Also, for the purpose of this demo, I'm going through a 115-inch cab. It's kind of pointed off in the wrong direction and everything. I probably should point it at the camera, but you should still be able to hear it. This is a 15-inch Eminence Legend. Tremolo as well with speed and intensity. And this is the type of tremolo that actually varies the bias on the output tubes. Real nice tremolo. again, I'm jumping the channels so I can use channel 1 and channel 2 just like you can with old Marshall plexis. So you can actually crank this thing and get some real nice distortion out of it. And that's with the volumes on each channel at about halfway, so you can imagine what this would do if I cranked it much past that. The bass right now is really rattling the floors, and even though I'm in a basement demoing this thing, I'm kind of afraid actually that my neighbors might be a bit pissed off if I keep this up. So man, this thing is just a monstrous amp. I've got nothing but good things to say about it. If you ever get a chance to check out a Traynor Custom Reverb model number YSR-1, you should do yourself a favor and do so.